You're listening to New Hampshire Has Issues, and I'm your host, Liz Canada. A few notes about this particular episode, a bit different than previous ones. Cinde Warmington is a candidate running for office. She is running to be governor of New Hampshire. And because she is an active candidate, I've left almost every moment of our interview exactly as we recorded it. Because I want for you, dear listener, to have the information as I received it, as if you were sitting right next to me, listening to her as well. So you're literally getting the answers as they were delivered, in order, beginning to end, the pauses, the thinking time, all of it. My second note is that I ask her almost immediately about her work related to opioids. It's really easy to see headlines or banners that have like a quick, simplistic point. But I have this whole podcast. So I wanted to know what happened and why, and what does she think about it now? So you'll get that answer in this episode. And finally, I mentioned a few times in the episode that there is a previous episode of New Hampshire Has Issues about the Executive Council. And then when I was listening back to the recording, I realized that essentially all of the topics brought up in this episode have previous episodes of New Hampshire Has Issues. Education freedom accounts, what you might have heard of as school vouchers, Medicaid, health insurance, state budget, affordable housing. They all have their own individual episodes. You can go back and listen to those after this one. She does mention one topic I have not covered yet on the podcast. So longtime listeners, see if you can spot it and let me know if you know someone who should come on the podcast. If you would like to support New Hampshire Has Issues, please visit patreon.com/NHHasIssues and you can become a monthly supporter for as little as $5 a month. With that, I will pass it over to Cinde Warmington and me. Thank you for listening. Welcome to New Hampshire Has Issues, the podcast that dares to ask, who would want to be governor of New Hampshire? I am your host, Liz Canada, and joining me today is someone who does, in fact, want to be governor, and she is running as the Democratic candidate in this year's election. Welcome to the show, Cinde Warmington.
Thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm wondering if you came prepared with a tagline like that for this episode.
I did.
Okay.
I was told to have a tagline, and I thought about it.
You do your homework. Yeah, you do your homework.
And I think, why are people working harder and falling further behind?
Good one. Applicable for so many episodes of this podcast. So I am most familiar with your work when you were on the Executive Council, which we'll get into a little bit later. But for listeners, if you're wondering, what the heck is the Executive Council? There's literally an episode of New Hampshire Has Issues called What the Heck is the Executive Council? So you can go back and listen to that after this episode. I have sort of an awkward question to start with. What do I call you? Do I call you Cinde? Do I call you Councilor Warmington? Do I use your full name, Cinde Warmington? How should I refer to you?
Cinde is great. A lot of people still refer to me as counselor, but Cinde is perfect.
I feel like that's how I've always referred to you, as Councilor Warmington, so I might slip and say one instead of the other. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens naturally in our conversation. So I like to start every episode with a simple question. Here in New Hampshire, Republicans have been in power at the state level for almost 10 years straight with governing trifectas. And if we want to count the Executive Council, we can say it's a quadfecta, though I don't think that's a real word, but we can use it. In that time, here are some of the things that have happened in New Hampshire. Older folks are being priced out of their homes. They can't downsize because there aren't places to go. Younger folks can't afford to buy their first house. Younger families have to choose between childcare and employment. Rent is going up faster than wages. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing for individuals as well as school districts and municipalities. People are literally choosing to stop taking medication because they can't afford it. They're not going to see healthcare providers because it's too costly to even go for an appointment. Public taxpayer dollars are being sent to wealthy families who've literally never sent their kids to public schools. And the tax cuts that have happened have been for actual millionaires and billionaires and big corporations. So with all of that said, that's just a quick snapshot of what's happening in the last few years. My simple question for you is, why would anybody want to be governor of this state? But more specifically, why would you want to be governor?
Well, let me just say, that was the least simple question I've ever heard. But
a little preamble into the question.
The truth is, I love New Hampshire. I love this state. This state has such great opportunity for all of us who love living here. Everyone who wants their own children to stay here and raise their families here. We have such a great opportunity in this state, and it is hands down the most beautiful state in the nation. And what we really need is a change in leadership that is going to focus on exactly the issues that you've just been talking about. And I am ready, after 4 years on the executive council, which I always say is 4 years of on-the-job training to be governor, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work for the people of our state. And that's why I want to be governor.
Great. And I'm excited to talk to you about that on-the-job training for later in our episode. So I'm really excited that you've already brought that up. It's really important. So when I think about preparing for an episode of this show, I think about what the topic is and what a listener might know right away, even if they're not deeply entrenched in the topic itself. And so for you, Cinde, Counselor Warmington, I want to address something from your professional career right away, because I think people might hear this about you. In the early 2000s, you worked as a lobbyist for Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, and you also represented pain care. Since then, years later, Purdue Pharma admitted criminal wrongdoing in their actions. And also, the opioid epidemic has devastated families across New Hampshire. I wanted you to come on this podcast because I want to know what you think now, after doing that work, yes, 20-something years ago, but you still had that job. And we all know now things about the opioid epidemic. So what is it that you say? What do you say to Granite Staters, especially those who've been personally impacted by the harm of opioids?
Yeah. I say to them that I know their experience very well. I was financially on my own at age 17, due in large part because of addiction in my own family. My dad struggled with addiction his entire adult life. It had a huge and profound effect on me. It is something that we are still struggling with. Members of my family are struggling with today. And sadly, we did not escape the opioid crisis. I know very, very deeply and personally the pain, the loss, the shame associated with addiction. And I went into healthcare from the very beginning because I wanted to help people. And in 2001, as an attorney at Shaheen and Gordon, I was assigned a project to represent Purdue Pharma. The entire project it lasted 9 months. And during the course of that representation, I was fundamentally arguing that it should be doctors that decide which patients get which medications and not the Medicaid program. It is literally an argument I had made dozens of times over the course of my career in different capacities. And I think if I made that for any other company, nobody would disagree with that. I had in fact made it on behalf of patients and against insurance companies, as I said, dozens of times over the course of my career. What I did not know at the time, and I don't believe could have known, was that Purdue Pharma was engaged in and would be engaged in perpetuating a massive criminal fraud. They lied to the medical community to deceive doctors into believing that it was safer to prescribe OxyContin under circumstances when it was not. And I mean, just to be clear, it is very, very hard to look back on that and see that work. But if I had known then about their lies, I most certainly would have had nothing to do with that. It would be so totally contrary to who I am, to where I came from, to the fact that so many people that I have loved have struggled with addiction, and to the work that I have done in my entire life to lift up and make sure that people who are struggling with substance use disorder get the care that they need.
And so, do you regret taking on that contract? Do you feel remorse? How do you feel now, looking back? Like, what is it that you're feeling?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, right? I would never have. I would wish I had known. I wish I had known at the time. It was an environment where this was a massive, sophisticated, fraudulent criminal scheme that was only revealed over the course of years of litigation that followed my representation in 2002. And those lies were completely exposed only, over the years to come. As they were exposed and as I learned of them, sure. I mean, I wish I had known, but I had no way to know what they were up to. And of course, I wish I had nothing to do with them, ever.
So have you felt any responsibility to make amends or to contribute to addressing the opioid epidemic here in New Hampshire?
Well, that's really my life's work, right? I mean, I started as a teenager attending Al-Anon meetings to help my own family. I went into healthcare to fight for patients and make sure that they got the care that they needed. I did that through the course of my career. In the year 2000, I was actually instrumental in bringing medication-assisted treatment to the state. You may not know this, but it was actually illegal to use methadone to treat substance use disorder at one time, and I was instrumental in getting that law repealed so that we could bring medication-assisted treatment to the state. I advocated for lifting the limits on the prescribing of Suboxone so that more people could get treatment, on expanding access to telehealth so that more people could get treatment, on making sure that we had parity around mental health and substance use disorder in insurance companies, in fighting insurance companies. In my volunteer work, I have served on the board of mental health centers and treatment providers across the state to fight for this issue and to help remove the stigma that's attached to it. And as you saw on the executive council, this was always a primary concern of mine, making sure that people could get access to the care that they needed, and in some cases, educating the other counselors about the importance of access to care and what kind of care was effective and what people really needed. And so, yes, I have been doing this work. This is my life's work. I have been doing this work my entire life. And as governor, I would tackle this issue in the way that it really needs to be tackled, which is understanding that it is a four-legged stool. We need prevention. We need to make sure we have harm reduction and that we're really leaning in on that, and that we have treatment options available, and that we also have enforcement. It's all four of those things working together. And I think that we have not seen a comprehensive response to this that I would bring to the corner office.
I'm going to just ask sort of a tough question, Cinde, which is, are you sorry? Like, do you apologize to folks, even privately? Like, have you sat down with folks and apologized for that work? Yes, it was a brief time. It was a long time ago. But are you sorry?
Well, of course, I'm sorry that I have anything to do with it. It's hard to apologize for something you didn't know, but no one wants to have anything to do with Purdue Pharma, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. They were involved in a fraudulent scheme. They were lying. They were lying to the doctors. They were lying to the pharmacists. They were lying to the nurses. And yes, they were lying to their legal counsel. And do I wish that I had somehow known? Yes. And would I have done it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so do I regret that? Sure. Yes, absolutely. Have I had personal conversations with people? Absolutely. Lots of them. This is my life's work. And this is an issue that has had such a profound effect on me personally throughout my life. I remember as a young kid, my mom putting us in the car and driving from bar room to find my dad, and the fights that would ensue. I have for so much of my life, I have loved people who have struggled with substance use disorder. Anyone who knows me knows how important this issue has been to me and is to me, and how I would absolutely positively have nothing to do with this work if I had known.
Thank you for engaging in that conversation, which I know is uncomfortable. Like it just is. Like it's an uncomfortable conversation. And like I said, I think there's probably listeners who are coming on this episode to be like, all right, is Liz going to ask her about this? And I wanted to make sure that we engage in that right at the top.
I want to just say how much I appreciate the question and the opportunity to respond to it. It's difficult. It's difficult to talk about an issue that you have to understand that I had to go and have tough conversations with my 90, almost 92-year-old mom about having these conversations, right? I have to have tough conversations with my entire family about talking about something that has profoundly affected all of us throughout our lives.
The word that has come up for me as I've been preparing for this episode is the word accountability. Now, I'm going to make an assumption. I don't know how much reality TV you watch. I watch a tiny bit, and I don't know how much you watch. But on some of those types of shows, there's a lot of conversations about like that person needs to take accountability. And for me, when I think about politics and politicians, but beyond that, what I think about leaders, I'm looking for people who take accountability for their actions. And so like I know, for example, Governor Ayotte took money from the Sackler family, right? Like I want her to take accountability. And I appreciate you coming on here to take accountability for the work that you've done before. What voters really want are leaders who listen and care and act. Like that's what people actually want. So you ran to be the Democratic candidate for governor in 2024. Joyce Craig won that primary and was the nominee. Election cycles are so short here in New Hampshire. You sneeze and it's another election cycle. Like here we are in a new one. Things move so fast. And it's 2026 and you're, running for governor again. And a lot of us still have feelings about that primary that we carry with us. How do you plan to bring people in to your campaign?
Well, just as you said, Liz, it's about listening, right? It's about having these hard conversations. And the truth is, primaries are hard. These
Yep.
interfamily squabbles with, people that you care about. I've had primaries in 3 elections before this. And I remember someone telling me at the very beginning that you're going to be surprised by the people who are with you, and you'll be surprised by some people that are not, and even disappointed, and try not to take it personally. It's a primary. And they're just plain are difficult. And that was a hard fought primary. But the reality is that after primaries, I think we're all encouraged to just say, okay, now move on. The primary's over, just move on. And that's just not reality, right? People are invested in the candidate they supported. They worked hard. They're disappointed. I certainly felt that, from people after my primary, after I lost that primary. That it's just not reasonable that people are just going to move on. And I don't expect that. I expect to have tough conversations with people who have, real feelings about that primary. And that, I'm going to work to earn everyone's vote. I have no expectation that their vote will be there. I think it's my job to earn every single vote. And that's what I'm going to do. Have these conversations, listen, and hopefully earn the support of people going forward.
I'm really glad to hear that. That's the hard work of campaigning. And I myself am relieved that in the near future, the primary is going to be earlier. I think it's pretty rough to have a primary as late in the season to then turn around and have to get right into the general. So I'm glad that that's going to be a change in the future. But yes, earning every vote because we are such a ticket-splitting state, right? I said at the top, Republican trifecta for all these years, but Democrats are the federal delegation. So people are comfortable jumping from one side to the other. And so I imagine that is hard work to get out there and talk to folks, whether in group settings or just like this, one-on-one chit-chat on a podcast, of course.
It's the best part of the job. It's hands down the best part of the job is getting out there and talking to people about what their experiences are. And you just can't imagine the stories that you hear. I mean, literally the couple that isn't having their next child, right? Because they can't afford childcare. The teacher whose husband is also a teacher, who are both working 2 jobs now and can't ever afford to buy a house. They are, renting and can barely afford to pay rent. And, the people that are starting up a new business and are, being crushed by the costs of getting a new business up and started. To hear from the small businesses that are being hurt so much by the tariffs and the loss of Canadian tourism, and I think for me personally, the doctors and the patients that are losing their health care. The doctors are, this is their life's work, right? To provide this health care. And now they can see that their own patients are losing access to the health care they need, they're not going to come in. They're not going to get the care they need. And it's frightening, but this is the best part of the job. You meet so many amazing, wonderful, resilient people with still so much optimism for the future despite the challenges. It's a remarkable thing to travel across this state and talk to people, and I'm grateful for it.
All right, maybe another awkward question. You talk to a lot of people. Have you talked to Joyce Craig since that campaign?
I have talked to Joyce, and I respect Joyce, very much. As you know, I threw my full support behind Joyce once I lost that primary, and I have reached out to Joyce, and I respect that. She is moving on and is a private citizen at this point in her life.
I told this story on a previous episode. Molly took the boys, we have 2 boys, took them to the 2024 gubernatorial candidate forum in Exeter. And so she took them to see you and Joyce Craig and John Kuiper in 2024. And afterwards, she asked them, like, what did you think of each of them? And our younger kiddo, who's 11 years old at the time, our younger kiddo said about you, she seemed to really like being on that council thing. Why did she leave? So let's talk about that council thing that you were on. I think the executive council is the least understood part of New Hampshire government, because why on earth would anybody know about this thing? Most people know what the governor does, generally speaking, but they don't really know what the executive council is. They don't know how many people are on it. They don't even know how they get there. Do you vote for them? Are they appointed? So a lot of mystery to the executive council. I got to see your work up close and personal from my day job. The New Hampshire Family Planning Program contracts were before the council, and your 4 colleagues at the time voted them down, and you were the lone wolf advocating for them, and you held your own. So one thing I noticed in your time on the council is that you often use those public meetings as a way to ask difficult questions to the commissioners, to the agency heads, to the nominees, and to the governor. I mean, you were asking tough questions of the governor as well. So you seem to use the meetings as a public accountability forum. Was that intentional? Seems like a leading question, but also, was it effective? Did you find it effective being the only Democrat and having that space as a public accountability forum?
It's the job. The job of the executive council is to be a check on the governor, to be the watchdog, to bring accountability to this process. So yes, it's very intentional. It's inscribed in our Constitution, and I did it with vigor and took my responsibilities very seriously as an executive counselor to make sure that we were always highlighting the issues that I wanted the voters to know about, that there were things happening at that council table that were going to affect the lives of Granite Staters, and that I wanted people to know about those. And as you mentioned, in the area of reproductive rights, I was the lone voice on the executive council, and really fighting to make sure people understood that by defunding those family planning services, they were expressing their own ideological beliefs about abortion in a completely inappropriate way that was taking real health care, cancer screenings, taking contraception away from people, taking STD testing away from people all across our state. And they did that. And I made sure that people knew about that. I also was that leading voice on making sure people understood how dangerous Sununu's abortion ban was. People would be very dismissive of that abortion ban, but as I very clearly established, what you don't want is doctors trying to make a decision about just how close to death is this patient before I can actually give them the health care that they need, and that ban is dangerous. And in so many other ways, you asked if it was effective. I think one of the really clear examples was the affordable housing money. We had $100 million in housing money that Governor Sununu brought to the council with not a word in there about affordable housing. And I actually worked with all of the other councilors to say, hey, this is not just important in my district. This is important in your district, too. When Governor came to the council, he didn't have a vote at the table. We actually stood together, and I led that effort to make sure that that money went to affordable housing, and ultimately it did. And so, I was very, very proud of all the work that I did on the executive council. Sometimes, as you say, I'm the lone voice, so it was a 4-1 vote. But other times, and during those times, the value would be just to shine light on what's going on. That's the job, right? Other times, and maybe what I was most proud of, were those 3-2 votes when I was able to drag 2 votes across that table, just by treating people with dignity and respect and talking to them. And it's important work, and it's prepared me well for being governor.
You sort of alluded to this just now, but what did you learn about governing and leading the state by serving on the council? Maybe something you wouldn't have known otherwise.
Well, certainly how to make government work for the people. A huge part of the job of executive council is constituent services. And so as an executive counselor, I would hear from a constituent that they were having some problem. Let's say, I'll give you an example. I met a woman one night at dinner who recognized me and came and told me that she'd had a job offer at a hospital for several months, but that they couldn't go forward with the hiring until the background check was complete, and it was taking all this time. And so the very next day, I went out, I reviewed what was with the agency, what's going on with this case, why is this held up for a reason? And it turned out it was held up because of the fingerprinting. There was a backlog of fingerprint checks that needed to be done. And so I resolved the problem for that person, but that made me say, okay, how big is this problem? There were thousands of them, and it was not just affecting healthcare, it was also affecting childcare and other industries in our state. There was this
Probably
huge
education,
backlog.
I would imagine.
Yeah. And so we went to work to get that resolved. We didn't have adequate staffing, and we didn't have adequate programs in place, systems in place to get those background checks done timely, and we got them done. But that is true in every single constituent complaint that ever came before me, is that I would resolve the issue for the individual, and then I would look beneath the surface to see, is there a larger problem here, and can we make government work better for the people of our state? And I saw that with the flooding out in my district. We had quite a lot of really damaging floods, and getting cities and towns working together with the state agency for FEMA money, which has greatly improved in the agency. But it wasn't working very well at the time. And, working to improve that, just making sure that we're focusing on improving government so it's working for the people of our state. I would also say that probably one of the most important things to learn as an executive counselor is how to stand your ground and do it respectfully, and how to know when to find the common ground, and sort of the wisdom to know the difference, right? Like, find ways when you can to work together to benefit the people of our state. It shouldn't be all partisan politics. I mean, the truth is, I disagreed with the governor and other councilor members on many, many policy issues, but there was lots of times when I could work together to get things done for the state of New Hampshire. And that's an incredibly important lesson if you're going to be governor in a mixed legislature.
This is an excellent segue to my last question for you, really. Let's imagine future. Let's fast forward a few months. You wake up. It's Wednesday, November 4th, the day after the election, and you've been elected governor. I imagine you found out the night before, but now it's the next day. You've at least gotten a little sleep. You wake up. You've been elected. What can you actually do? What, whether you have a Democratic trifecta or a mixed government, which could very well happen, right? It could be a combination. What are the tangible actions that you're going to take before and after you're sworn in that Granite Staters can look to?
Yeah. On day one of my administration, I would put in a moratorium on data centers. I have been quite outspoken about this issue. This is something where I think that Kelly Ayotte has really failed to provide leadership. We need to take a breath here and evaluate the impacts of these data centers on electric rates, on water consumption, on water contamination, on noise pollution. We need to make sure we have guardrails in place that allow our local communities to make decisions about whether and where these things should be appropriately located, and making sure that they pay their fair share if they are going to come to our state. And I think that is something that the people are calling for, and that we would make immediately. I could take action to put a moratorium in place on that. I would take immediate action to address private equity in our state, and specifically the buying up of private housing, which is jacking up the cost of housing around our state. And this is something that a lot of people aren't aware of, but we really need to be putting guardrails about what private equity can do in our state. I don't know, a lot of people don't know this. They're always kind of surprised when I tell them, but in our state, you have not one person in state government who is responsible for how many housing units we have, how many we need, and how we are going to get there. So on day one, appointing somebody who has that responsibility and is actually accountable to report to the governor on what is the plan moving us forward immediately. Housing is the number one issue. If we don't resolve the housing crisis, we can't resolve almost any of the other affordability issues in our state. So top priority issue for me. And then the third thing is to assess the impact of tariffs, and to sign an executive order to assess the impact of tariffs on our state, so that we can move forward to pursue refunds and legal action, if necessary, against the Trump administration to recover the cost of tariffs for the people in our state, and to prevent these harmful tariffs going forward that are damaging so many people. I mean, it is fundamentally a sales tax on families of our state, an average of $1,700 a year. And it has really damaged our relationships with Canada. And of course, the president has just announced another round of 50% tariffs to go into effect against Canada. That's hurting our state. It's hurting tourism. It's hurting that relationship with our good neighbors to the north, which we need to work to prepare. There is so much the governor can do. Those are just some of the things that I'll be busy. I can tell you this, writing a budget that's going to reflect the priorities of the people of our state. And I look forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting to work for the people of our state.
Sounds like a lot of work ahead. That's for sure. Both the campaign and if you are elected in November. Any final thoughts to share?
I just want to say how much I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and to give me to share my thoughts with your viewers about what a New Hampshire could look like. And sometimes we talk a lot about the things that are being done wrong right now, and there's a lot of that. We need to get rid of these education vouchers. You mentioned them, but it's truly just a pickpocket scheme, taking money out of the pockets of working people and handing it to the most wealthy people in our state. We need to reverse these Medicaid cuts that are so damaging to our state. And we need to tackle the housing crisis. We need to stand up to Trump. We need to protect the right to vote. There's so much work to do. And I think some people can get sort of almost down about where we are. And I would just say, we don't need to be. We are a great state. We have a great future. We can be a place where everyone can live and thrive, and every family can have a roof over their heads and feed their kids and clothe them and give them a great education and retire with dignity. Let's go take back New Hampshire for the people of our state.
And maybe then I can also change the title of my podcast to New Hampshire Had Issues, and that would be a great time as well.
I look forward to that.
Thank you, Cinde, for coming on the podcast, and good luck out there.